And next up, we have Mr. Catalin Badea, who manages everything product related for NetNumber GDS. So a very warm welcome, chaps. Hello. Good to have you with us. So NetNumber, Catalin, would you care to introduce NetNumber, where the company came from, and what you're focusing on now?
Sure, yeah. We're a phone number intelligence provider. What does that mean? So we provide information about phone numbers globally. We have a wide portfolio covering, things like traffic routing, fraud prevention, rating and billing, authentication. Essentially, everything that has to do something with phone numbers, we have the answer as to what that means. It's the company is headquartered in the US. We're very international, a lot of people working from Europe and from other places. And we've been around for around 20 years. Among other things, we run the messaging routing registry in the US. So that would be it in a nutshell.
Fantastic. We'll come back to that, actually, because that's a really, really good point. And Roberto, your background, what you were doing before NetNumber, because there was life before NetNumber, was there not?
There was, yeah. Sounds incredible, right?
I know.
Yeah, so I come from an IT background. I was working for a French company doing IT outsourcing with some also customer from the telecom space. And I joined NetNumber almost 2.5 years ago. Ever since, all my life is about number intelligence. I breathe number intelligence. I eat number intelligence, and now we speak about it.
So, Catalin, let's talk about phone numbers. Personally, I haven't changed my mobile phone number. Actually, thinking back, it's probably for getting on for 16, 17 years. I've had exactly the same phone number. Just what's going on in the world out there with subscribers, just talking generally now before we zero in on things, with regards to the average mobile subscriber and their numbers. Do you see them keeping their phone numbers for longer?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. It depends a lot from market to market. So there are markets that are, pretty stable, very much postpaid oriented. People stick with their, either with their carrier, but if not, at least with their mobile number for a long time, even when they port. There are also markets out there that are much more dynamic, a lot of, competition between carriers, a lot of number portability. And, there are markets where you wouldn't own just one phone number. You would own probably 2 or 3 or 4, depending on, the different offers that are out there in the market. From your perspective, you holding your phone number for 16 years, that's an excellent, signal about you and your phone number. Your phone number would have a, very high reputation if we speak in this type of language. And that's important because if we're looking at phone numbers, I'm not saying, anything new really, but they are at the core of almost everything about us today, from securing our online accounts like Facebook and Google and whatnot. Pretty much everyone is using one-time password as a channel for verification. Then back to banks where the mobile transaction, the OTP is used as a verification channel for financial transactions. So the phone numbers are pretty much everywhere in our lives, not only when it comes to person-to-person communication, but also in our engagements with pretty much all the enterprises out there.
Would you say a phone number has reached a level where it's viewed at the same level or even more importantly than, for example, a passport or an ID card?
Absolutely. I think from a digital identity perspective, it is probably the most relevant indicator, the most relevant item there.
Thank you. So, Roberto, your role with the company is on the sales side of things. I like your title. It's very, very clear. There's no obfuscation. You're not hiding it. It's super clear.
It can be, yeah.
I know. Fantastic. So who are what's your target market? What's your target audience? And what kind of services are you selling them?
Sure. So historically, NetNumber was more of a partner of communication service providers. So most of our customer base is effectively operators, CPaaS players, aggregators. And recently, we are developing also full product gamma in the anti-fraud prevention. So we're talking about fintech companies, banking, enterprises. So this is all my customer base. We are operating international. We have data internationally collected for over 20 years. So in these 20 years, we developed a relationship with almost all the carriers worldwide, and this gave us a direct access to most of the databases that are relevant in the industry. So due to our history and the trust that we developed with all these players, we are able to provide solutions that can help you not only routing your traffic correctly, but it can help you trusting a phone number, meaning we are giving you all the data that are related to that number, and then you can take the choice if you want to trust it or not. And the history of a phone number, it's something that is getting more and more important because, as you said, 17 years, the same number. How much history does it have? How many SMSs you sent? And all of this is tracked.
Oh, a lot. I've received a lot. I have to admit, I'm doing my bit for the industry, and every single opportunity I have, do you want to see messages via email or WhatsApp or this, the only one I tick is SMS. Yeah. So I'm doing my bit for it. Thank you. I'm doing my bit for all of you guys out there, personally.
Yeah. Having a little philosophical moment. So yesterday, I just focused on, hey, how many things I changed in the past, like 10 years of my life, no? How many shoes you change, how many mobile devices you change, how many partners you change. But the phone number is still there, it's still the same, no? What are the things that force you to change a number? Maybe when you change country, where to live?
When you change partner?
When you yeah. That's a good one. We didn't prepare it, actually. So, yeah, just making this reflection, it makes us understand what is the role of the phone number and the role it has to define our identity, not just virtually, digitally, but just making an example from news that actually came out, I think, a month ago in US. A woman received a call. On the other end of the phone, there is the voice of her daughter. He's saying, I've been kidnapped. Please give money to my kidnappers or they will kill me. And this call came from an unknown number, but the voice was known, right? So you tend to identify the person with the voice. The mother, right after the call, was cool enough to call the real number of the daughter, and the daughter was completely safe. It was a call generated by artificial intelligence, simulating the voice of the daughter. So even our phone number can be more associated to us than even our voice that can be completely manipulated and used. And yeah, closing the philosophical parenthesis, I think it's a huge indicator of how important is phone number in our daily life.
Fantastic. Catalin, you opened the door on the USA and the campaign registry. Could you just explain the messaging market, what the campaign registry is and what you do for that, and what it looks like if you're a business wanting to send text messages to your clients?
Yeah. Sure. So yeah, the US is a pretty particular market when it comes to messaging. It's very strict, and there are quite a few processes to keep it the way it is. And this derives from the fact that it's also one of the top markets for telecom fraud in general, be it on voice or on messaging. So on messaging, the industry came together. It's a completely unregulated thing. It just evolved from the industry collaborating, but what was created there essentially is the 10DLC or A2P messaging framework. 10DLC comes from 10-digit long code, which is the sender ID length in the US, and all the A2P campaigns, they have to be vetted and registered. And this happens via the infrastructure of our partner TCR, the campaign registry. They are the front end to the brands, and on behalf of the enterprises, they register the brands, and then they verify and record the A2P use cases. And then the second element in this framework is our net number services registry, where all the sender IDs that are associated with each campaign, they are recorded and stored in our registry. And on behalf of the industry, we distribute this data then downstream to the messaging hubs, to the carriers. And what it does essentially is that spoofing is impossible, because sender IDs, they have to be always vetted in advance. And then downstream, it's a controlled ecosystem where everybody is checking against this authoritative data to determine, if I see an A2P message coming from this sender ID, is this sender ID even approved for A2P messaging? Because if not, it's something that it can be, filtered out.
But talking about trust, there's a further party involved behind you as well. So Aegis Mobile, who are doing the actual verification of individuals and organizations.
Together with with the campaign registry. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so the whole process, how fast is it?
Oh, it's really fast. I mean, it's almost real time. So by the nature of the integration between the campaign registry and Aegis, this vetting of brands is happening in real time. And then, we also offer a real time API then to associate the sender IDs with the campaign. So yeah, the data is distributed to the ecosystem real time.
And I think the key thing to recognize in the US is all the mobile operators have come together in this one program. So this is what we've been talking here this morning about Sweden and collaboration, and essentially this has really cemented and brought a real life solution out from that. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, Roberta, so that's the campaign registry, and that's in the USA. Do you think it's not going to be easy, of course, but is there scope simply in taking the whole concept and copy pasting it practically to every single country around the world? And do you think that should be done?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, we heard all the problems that the industry is having in the previous panels, and this could be one of the possible solutions to actually tackle it. There are problems of logistics, of putting actually the operators together. Operators don't really want to share data. But as we said, it will be important to tackle the problem before the regulator does, so that we can take our own direction. I don't know, Katalin, what do you think about it? Do you think it's going to be a stable solution?
Yeah, there's always going to be, a local element, but this idea in general, and this is something that, is not unique to the US really. I mean, UK with the sender ID protection registry, and, Ireland and Spain, there are multiple countries where the idea of messaging sender IDs being pre-registered and known, stored in a central place in the entire country and protected, is something that is.
But the issue is about speed. If you can do it at speed, and the important thing I was going to say, at scale, that is absolutely critical, because otherwise, if I'm going to have to wait, I appreciate, say I was a new business setting up, then the verification of me as an individual director of a brand new business would probably require some manual intervention in that. So that might take a bit longer, and I would have to expect that. But at the end of the day, what we don't want is this process to add undue friction. So people think, again, another roadblock in the way of using, for example, SMS for customer interactions. We don't want that to happen. So it's that speed and scale. What are you doing at Net Number? Because you're ultimately responsible for the product that gets out there. What are you doing with regards to ensuring that your solution can handle both the speed and the scale?
Yeah, this has multiple layers. So on one hand, it's all about the APIs and the robustness of the APIs, because everything that we do, it has to be exposed via API so that this can be incorporated into automated processes. That's one thing. So we don't like PDF forms, we don't like email-based processes, we like API-based processes, because these allow automation, not for us necessarily, but for the ecosystem players. Like you said, it's a brand, it's a messaging service provider, they want to launch an A2P campaign really fast. It's important then, this is automated. And, also back to your point, the vetting and verification also happens real time with Aegis, is not something that is based on, manual background checks. So that's one element. The other is the robustness and the availability, the scalability of the platform, and this is something that by our position in the messaging ecosystem, we have messaging customers that scale up to even tens of thousands of transactions per second, and it's important to have a platform that can deal with this type of traffic peaks in real time. And then it's also important on the data distribution downstream. There are different consumers of the data. How is the data distributed? Not a daily update, not a daily distribution, but something that is distributed in real time, because this, A2P traffic is dynamic, fraud is dynamic. A certain fraud attack might just take, a few minutes, and then it can do a lot of damage in 5-10 minutes. So it's important that this data is available to everyone in the ecosystem in real time to, on one hand, enable proper routing and billing, but on the other hand, prevent fraud.
Okay, Roberto, so there are a couple of firsts today. This is the first event in MEF's history that's ever been in the Nordics. So it's great. It's great to be here. It's great to be here in Sweden. But also, this is, I think, the first event in MEF history, unless it's just something limited to mobile operators, where the majority of attendees, it was open to all, but the majority of attendees are from mobile network operators. Let's talk about this opportunity for mobile network operators for what I call mobile subscriber intelligence. So no doubt a lot of the business today from net number is still a large portion of your revenue will still come from message, voice, etc., routing. So routing is still going to be there, and it's a huge part of the revenue. But what's the opportunity and the scale of the opportunity out there for this mobile subscriber intelligence piece?
So it was really insightful to hear all previous voices in the previous panels, because it defines a situation that is pretty much matching with what we are analyzing from net number point of view. So we know that out there is a large portion of fraud that could be prevented, and without even implementing super big solutions like proposed before, we could just use what we already have in place. Just let's try to use it, organizing it in a correct way. So there are a lot of data that refer to a number that could help us to prevent these fraud cases. And well, after also the speech of Inea before, we see that, for example, 40% of the artificially inflated traffic is coming from non-valid numbers. We have data that can simply validate a phone number in that number. We recently released a new product that's called Numeric Check, that is putting together all the data intelligence that we developed in the past 20 years. So not just historical data, like can be, for example, the porting history of a number, simple code range, or number portability, but we also combine this with live checks that can be HLR checking and more static data. So we combine it with all the fraud databases that we have access to, with the DNOs. So we created a product that could already prevent at least 40% of this SMS fraud. So I think this is one of the opportunities that we should face. Maybe it has not been talked enough about the importance of data, because many other solutions, they're taking a different direction. There is already something that we could do, and sticking all together as an ecosystem, as we have a lot of operators here. So sharing even more this data. If you don't want to share it between yourself, just share it with a third-party vendor, like can be net number. So we can distribute it in the industry with a product that's simple to use via API. It's very fast, as we said, it's scalable, and you could use it even tomorrow. And this 40%, it's pretty relevant, no? So what would be the impact?
It's huge. It's a huge figure, but also I think just doing basic things, getting the basics right is hypercritical. So still the number of mobile operators out there without a decent firewall, but most importantly, a great managed service behind it to keep on top of all the changing fraud dynamics. I find that personally very sad that, hey, it should be a checkbox. You have a great A2P SMS firewall. You have a great SS7 signaling firewall. Every single mobile operator should have it done. Same goes for a messaging aggregator. But also, and Uku, I do watch your LinkedIn. Yes, and mentioning something that from one of your posts, you actually did a little video, very, very short one, just saying, hey, to enterprises out there, it was a couple of days ago I saw that, just make sure that your numbers are genuine. It goes back to verify those numbers, because if an enterprise does not regularly update, clean house on their own customer database, then the risk is that they simply say, okay, I want this content, this happy Christmas greeting, whatever it might be, sending to my 5,000 customers. But if you haven't verified that those numbers exist and you're paying a messaging company for every submitted message, then you're wasting a lot of money. So the amount of money enterprises around the world are wasting on that. So use the likes of net number, just the basic number check. Is the number still in service, the number existing, etc. So getting the basics right is super important as well.
Should do more marketing, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I would add to that there is also, the other side of the coin in terms of the opportunity, or revenue opportunity for operators out there, which is subscriber data that helps the ecosystem implement better fraud prevention practices, and it also translates into a revenue stream for the operators. And I'm speaking about, SIM swap detection APIs, 10-year APIs, porting history APIs, and all these that can, in certain markets, UK, US are certain examples. They are super mature. They've been embraced by the industry, and the banks are seeing, in the UK at least, a great success of reducing account takeover fraud by implementing these APIs, which are simple to implement. They are they're rather inexpensive if you put it in the context of my bank customer might lose 10,000, 50,000 pounds, and then I have to reimburse them versus a small cost to check if a number was SIM swapped recently. So there's the other side, and to Roberto's point earlier, we would encourage operators that didn't implement this type of APIs to think about that, because it helps with fraud, and then their subscribers are happier, but it's also, like I said, it's a revenue stream for them.
Well, so I've been around the industry a long time, and 10 years ago, I actually worked with a mobile operator who provided that solution for the UK, and I helped frame that product. But the hardest thing going was to actually convince the mobile operators, like the one sitting in this room, that actually they should move forward with it and go through with it. Let's talk about privacy, GDPR, regulation. That was when I was doing this 10 years ago, and I was looking into this and working with these guys on it. That was the number one thing thrown in the way by mobile operators. It was, we can't do this because of regulation, because of data privacy, because of this, because of that. But you can, within that framework of GDPR or whatever it might be, whether in California or whether in South Africa or whether you're in the EU, you absolutely can do it. So how do you go about just getting the message across literally and educating operators that mobile subscriber intelligence productizing is something they can do? And not only is it great, as you mentioned, for enhancing that trust, but also bringing some really nice margin.
Yeah, I would say to that, there are already best practices as to, these type of APIs have been implemented, and in many countries in the European Union, so subject to GDPR. And, just to take an example, if you have a SIM swap API, you don't necessarily have to provide the exact timestamp when the SIM swap was ported. What you can do is that you get on the API request, was this number ported sooner than date X? And then you return a yes or no answer. And the same goes for, name number match and 10-year, all these kind of the APIs. So they obscure the mobile subscriber data while helping the brand secure processes.
So it's how you frame the question. So not where is James roaming, but is James roaming, yes or no?
Exactly.
Is he in the UK? Yeah, basically like that. Roberto, from a sales perspective, do you see it's a really big opportunity, this mobile subscriber intelligence? Because personally, from what I've seen and looking around, we've talked about financial services so many times, two-factor authentications, banks using it, but also regular companies, non-financial service companies, they want to have that trust. And the trust goes both ways. They want their brand to be trusted, and they need to trust that James Williams is James Williams, Catalin Baudet is Catalin Baudet, and Roberto Pareto is Roberto Pareto. So you want that. Is it a really big opportunity? Do you think possibly even this opportunity for operators could be bigger than messaging? Because messaging for most operators, talking about A2P messaging, is barely 1%, and on a good day from mobile operators, 2% of their whole revenue. So could this be even bigger?
You already said it, no? It could definitely be. It's just depending on the way we want to face the topic and if we want to face it. So the more I work with my customer, the more I understand that there was a widespread, I would say, not understanding of the potential of it. And the more we talk, the easier it gets to get to the point. So I think we still need a period of education. And after that, well, you stated yourself, the opportunity is huge. We just need to get there.
You're saying there is a huge opportunity.
Yeah. I was called a net number Jesus before because I was evangelizing it. I also had long hair, so it was easy. It was easy the comparison. But yeah, that was the hardest part of my job. And once they understand, it's much easier to not even convince them. They're coming to me and say, yeah, let's do it.
And the price points for fraud prevention data in general, and for specifically for fraud prevention operator APIs, that tend to run much higher than the cost of an SMS. So yeah, maybe not the same volumes, but in terms of profitability and revenue opportunities.
It's a very good point, because it's a weird situation, because in messaging we talked about that. It's like if you were to think about increasing, let's say altering the commercial model, increasing the price by 20% or 30%. Oh, you can't do that. The enterprise will never have that. Yet they're willing to pay a good amount more for that intelligence. It's a strange one, dichotomy, because the value of an SMS, for example, can be huge as well. Yeah, it's a very, very strange. Can I ask now, we're going to put this out to the audience. We're going to talk to the audience now. Mobile operators, what are you mobile operators in Sweden doing with regards to mobile subscriber intelligence? Ole, what are you doing at Telenor? Have you got a solution along these lines, or are you working on it, or what's going on? There we go.
To be honest, I don't know, really. I know we do something, but I don't think we do so much. We have, of course, checking for Sweden and internally, but for foreign numbers, I don't think we do much.
Well, here we go. Look, this is business generation in the room. We've got companies who do this.
I've discussed it before
in the room, and this is a great opportunity.
Like yeah.
Fantastic. Michaela and Simikask, what are you doing here at Telia?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. It's past the microphone,
right
not the
now
parcel.
we're answering a customer, but I hand that over to you, Simon. What are we doing in this area? Are we doing
approximately?
Anything?
Yeah.
Please repeat the question before I answer.
Yeah. No. Which question do you want me to ask him? Yeah. The audience. No. So, what is Telia doing with regards to having a mobile subscriber intelligence solution? So, a solution you can go to the market with, either your own homegrown or in partnership with companies like NetNumber, to go and offer solutions to banks to say, hey, for X amount, we can check if James has swapped his SIM card within the past 30 days or whatever it is.
As far as I know, we don't have that as a commercial service today, but we are having some APIs that we use internally for premium SMS and payment fraud protection, like
yes, you do, yeah.
User swap, owner swap, terminal ID, terminal information. So you can see, for example, is it another terminal or the same terminal that tries to do this thing? So we have such APIs, but they are not commercialized yet.
Okay. Mario, dare I ask, Tele2? And then is Anders around still from Trey? Not Carlson. Hooks up.
No, in Tele2, we are really seriously looking into this. We are also looking at 5G regulation. We are looking at the European wallet and trying to see how we could do something already now in this direction. And I think we used to have some type of discussions with other operators, but I think it was too early. Yeah. It happened 2 years ago. But definitely it's something very interesting for us. And actually, I will get in touch with you guys after this.
Yeah, I leave here all my business cards, so you can.
Wonderful.
There we go. And have we got Mr. Huxell around? Trey? Is Anders? Anyone from Trey here? 3?
Anders was here.
He was here. Oh, they're outside. Okay. Well, does anyone know if Trey are doing it? No. If they're not in the... Anders know, because if Trey aren't in the room, they're going to be talked about. Yeah.
I know a lot. But yeah, they have some APIs already that they got from the UK.
So
they have it ready and waiting for some pilots and stuff.
Right, so they're taking it from 3 UK. And
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
From a group.
They have some stuff. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tele2. There we are, telling what 3 are doing. Very good, very good. This is collaborative. This is very, very nice. So very good. Thank you. So that's really, really interesting. So it's clear to see that different operators are on a different part of that journey, but certainly from talking with NetNumber here and from hearing other people speak during the day as well, there's a real huge, absolutely a huge opportunity here that needs to be embraced. Katalin, if an operator was to just say yes to you guys and say, wow, okay, this sounds really good, and what steps would need to be done? How long would it take, realistically?
Yeah.
And what's the hardest part? What's the hardest part of it?
Yeah. So it will depend from case to case, obviously, in terms of the type of data that we're talking about, the type of APIs and everything. But I think probably the hardest part is around the contractual framework and technology. These are things that usually take time. But these are problems that we're not reinventing the wheel. These are things that have been solved in other markets. So like I said earlier, there are best practices, there are ways to go about it. There is a lot of inspirational learning that is already available. So it's pretty straightforward.
Fantastic. And Roberta, would you agree with that? I take it you would.
I tend to be very optimistic, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more about the willingness to just start, because then we already have processes in places. As mentioned, we run several registries by ourselves. So we have all the technology, all the intention to do it. We just need the access point, just create a stable and meaningful connection with operators. So if there is the willingness, we already have the technology, and it's just about sticking together and developing a solution.
What about the whole overcoming a resistance perhaps from mobile subscribers? So somewhere along the way, at some point, the mobile operator is going to have to contact somehow the mobile subscriber to say, we're using this information for the benefit of you, ultimately to protect you, but we're using certain parts of information. And there would there have to be, how does it work? Would there have to be an opt-in? So would I have to, let's say I was a subscriber here in Sweden of one of the operators, and you're approaching one of the operators, getting them on board, would they have to approach me, and how could that be done? And basically, would I have to opt into that, or can it be done without that as an individual subscriber?
Yeah. Again, this will depend from market to market what the local regulation might say. So it's difficult to provide like a blanket answer for everything. But
in market you do know. I don't know. Just say take the UK for example. What the situation would be.
In the UK, as far as I know, it's based on there is a way to legitimate interest. I think that's how it's called. So it's done without explicit subscriber consent, because the data is provided in such a way and for such purposes that it
like you mentioned, so it can't be used by the individual. Okay, that's absolutely fantastic. And Rita, believe it or not, we're getting fairly close to the close of the panel. We're a few minutes away, and I'd like to open up for some questions as well then from the audience. But title, Harnessing Phone Number Verification to Combat Fraud, actually going about harnessing it. So you mentioned you've been about 20 years, you've got that trust within the business. Are there still, let's say, countries around the world which make, let's say, acquiring this trusted information from a supply side harder than others, and other frustrations they were actually getting hold of this number intelligence? You're trying to protect people, but actually it could be the regulation working against the likes of net number and not allowing you access. Is that a real issue out there that you're aware of?
I'm not directly involved with procurement. No. Katalin is more involved with it.
Katalin, please feel free.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So if we're looking at mobile operator APIs, it's something that, like we said earlier, it's mature in some markets, but it's very much in development in many other markets. So it's by no means a global phenomenon or global available services for now. Now, from our perspective, that's one type of data, one tool in our toolbox. There are other data points, other data sets that we've worked with for 20 years. And, still, if you're looking from the perspective of, can I trust this number globally? We have data sets that we already use to.
Fantastic. Have we got any questions from the audience? Point? Got Annette, you were going to ask something. That touch your nose. We have Mr. Michael Power. We can always trust Michael. Sorry, there we go. Got your e-cigarette there.
Yeah, here we go. So a really interesting service you guys offer, and I suppose one of the questions I'd have is, how do you have to be quite careful about who you sell to? Because I'm assuming the knowledge that you can give out actually could be used negatively as well as it can positively. So how do you protect your service?
That's a really, really good question. So how do you verify that? Yeah. If I come to you to buy your services, that I'm going to be using that for positive purposes?
Yeah. Well, the answer is pretty easy. So actually, we don't have personally identifiable information. We don't have names. We don't have addresses. This is not, we're not in the business. There are companies out there doing this. And to my point earlier, the operator APIs that are doing, for example, name check verification, you submit the number and the name that you believe is associated with the number because you got it in the registration process, and then you get a score back or a yes/no match. You don't actually get this information from the operator, so it's pretty safe in this respect. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic. Very good question. Anyone else? Any other questions? No. Catalin, closing remark.
Closing remark. There is a lot of data out there, a lot of tools that can be used for prevention. When you look at, phone numbers in advance of, a message, a phone call, a financial transaction that is happening, on a network. And I would encourage, everyone who's not using this type of data today to explore this opportunity and, maybe run a trial and assessment and analysis on how that could improve, some of the processes that are in place already today.
Fantastic. And Roberto?
Yeah, coming back to the philosophical reflection, net numbers are extremely important in our day-to-day life. We know that our business is basically existing around the phone number, the SMS business, as well as the voice business. I heard a lot about trust. No? So if the direction is we are losing trust from consumers and consumers are finding alternative ways, we need to find a way to get back trust. And what better way than protecting our customer with the technologies and the data that we already have in place? So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Take my business cards later. That's
okay. So there we have it, and it's clear to see that mobile subscriber intelligence, harnessing phone number verification, etc., is a real great potential. It's great potential revenue, but also it looks super good for an operator to you and your customer base, that you're actually leading from the front to protect people and protect your clients. So from my 2.5 years at MEF and being in the middle of it all, and middle of so many discussions all around the world in this, and some very big countries and huge markets, I would say personally, from what I've seen and before, because I've been involved personally in this 10 years ago as well, there is vast scope in this. And I think the strong recommendation is mobile operators, you have that brand presence that most companies do not have. It doesn't matter how big you are in the messaging game, whether you are an Infobip who's here, a Cinch who's here, a Twilio, or whoever you might be. Yes, we've all heard of them in the business messaging world, and we go, wow, the big companies, great. But out there, no one's heard of you. But everyone has heard of Tele2, Tre, Sverige, and Telia and Telenor. So the partnerships are the absolute key. So, Catalin, thank you very much. Roberto, thank you very much, and thank you for sponsoring this session as well and being part of the event. Much appreciated. Thank you. Round of applause. Thank you.